I once went to a women's hostel where 900 girls were there because they said, can you change the society for us? Can you tell our parents that we want to work and not get married?
From an unemployed person, right? What is he not doing correct? Is it about the skills or is it about approaching this company is not correct?
Both. 800 million people, 80 crore people actually get free ration. Most of the people in smaller towns have a free dwelling. They stay with their parents. I have been involved ever since I came back to India, and we will give employable skills to those people so that they can join good institution, write them to write a resume, give them digital literacy, also give them language skills. We've touched 30,000 people, which is a big deal. But the fact is, they just don't want to work. You have great schools in India who are teaching a breadth of subjects, but they're not going into the depth of those subjects.
Thank you so much, Mandeep, for your time.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure and a privilege to have you as a guest here.
Thank you for having me.
So Mandeep, I have been following your LinkedIn and
I'm not very regular on LinkedIn
but
actually.
It's been inspiring, right? You spent 10 years, almost a decade, right, with HDFC as their
11 and a half, yes.
As a global, or were you country head in India?
Yes, I was country head, but we did, during my tenure, we did open offices in Hong Kong, Middle East and stuff like that. There were rep offices, yes.
And then starting your own consulting firm now, correct?
Yes, much later. I was working with Linda Grayton. She's one of the top 10 business thinkers in definitely UK and globally. So then I was part of her team and I was heading Asia Pacific for her. She had a huge mandate from Ministry of Manpower in Singapore, and about trying to see the efficiency of the top Singapore corporates vis-a-vis rest of the world, benchmark them. So I had been her student from London Business School, so she said that why don't you head Asia for me, and we'll do this. So I went from here, and immediately within 2 months I jumped into that, and it turned out to be like baptism by fire. It was very good. Yeah.
Interesting. So my first question to you was that itself, that who is Mandeep Maitra outside the designation, let alone the designation? Like, how do you define yourself? You've been in various boardrooms, global as well as Indian. How do you define your journey?
Well, it is something that I feel that as a person I define myself as being a very brave, confident and driven person, which happens not just at work but even at home. I'm a very proud, homebody. I'm a very family person, and I have I think these things like work-life balance I've never believed in. I believed in integrating work and life. So I think my family, my daughter since she was very small, and my husband, they always knew what my dreams were, and unless your partner, who's my best friend, understands that, it's very difficult to get things working. So I think my daughter knows that. We all know, we take interest in each other's work. We are a total, if you're 3 of us, we generally don't need anything else because we love to travel, we have similar interests, we have pets, so a lot of things like that. I was there for her in her teen years. That's the best thing which happened, because we moved to Singapore, and I am there for my parents now, and I'm a caregiver. I'm very close to them, and that's the time when we came back from overseas. So I think being a home and a family person is very important to me, but I'm still very passionate about my causes that I work with. I believe in people, transforming people and organizations, and I continue to work in various ways to make that happen.
Interesting. And tell me more about your journey in the boardrooms. How has that been? How is India different than the global boardrooms? Give us some insight about that.
See, I was not on a board overseas, but the good part happened that I was coaching people who were part of CEOs and other C-suite people. and mentoring some of the women leaders, Europe as well as in Singapore. When that happens, you get in very good idea about what's happening, what is missing. Actually, if you are in a corner office in India, Singapore sometimes falls short of it, because Singapore is a regional office. Like
Correct.
Middle East can be able to Singapore, because there is always a head office in America, it is in UK, it's in Europe, somewhere else.
Correct.
And they are used to push, the final decision is taken. But the fact that I worked in a private sector bank where you were the final word in everything, it is so much huger job as compared to any other.
Correct.
And the complexities in India, the scale to build up in India is phenomenal. And I think no job comes close to that. So first of all, I think we don't give ourselves credit to the extent we do. And I think today I actually tell a lot of friends overseas that if you have to make money, you should be in India, because the salaries here are amazing. The kind of work here is amazing. The kind of chaos, the kind of ambiguity, the things that you can manage here, what you learn in India,
Correct.
you can't learn anywhere else. And then you are set up for the global thing. You can take it all on. And I think I'm part of some of the think tanks, even as part of the coaching network, as well as HR professionals. When you speak to the people in UK and US, I always have a feeling that they kind of think, are you really kidding me? You've been in India. First of all, they'll see, where are you from? And you're saying India, and they'll say, really, where? Mumbai. They actually feel. But I think the global experience opens your mind to the level of understanding that you have about being open, and you completely understand what every country's issues are.
Correct.
You are I think much tolerant about such things. It's I don't know whether you've noticed that we speak fast, we think fast, and when you're overseas, people say huh, and they react like that. So you actually learn and you tell people, so you are more mindful of a lot of things. Also we have we say to other people, but we do have a lot of inherent biases when it comes to race and age and ethnicities in India, or people who are differently abled and things like that. We haven't had very strong laws always when we are hiring or promoting such people or including them in the workforce. Overseas, you have very strong laws
Correct.
about it, and you learn to like or respect the fact that they are doing those things, because they know that they have a problem with
True.
that. So they have at least put laws to make sure there is a certain percentage there. And I think that helps. When you come back to India, you say, no, this is something we should be conscious of, and we should correct it. And this is something I've taken upon myself now that I have my own work, that I don't have to charge for it. If you call me to teach your senior people about unconscious biases, I love to tell people about that, that let's be aware of it, that it exists. You and I, we all have
Correct.
biases. What are my biases? You should be self-aware. And leaders not being self-aware about biases leads to cultures of organizations becoming like that, and then people not feeling that their workplace is inclusive enough.
Correct.
It's not safe enough
Correct.
to them to express themselves, and that affects productivity anyway.
No, you're very correct. Like, I think sometimes we just base it on gender diversity, right? But it's more than that, right? I've heard a lot of leaders today speaking about, or rather complaining about, Gen Zs, or are hesitant to recruit a little elderly people, and like you correctly mentioned about
ageism bias. Yes.
So what do you think are some of, for a startup or an early entrepreneur, right? Some of them are not even experienced, right? To identify or consciously think about their, listen, I have some biases here. How do you work with them, and how do you see that maybe through this medium, what should be they working on? Give us some tips that would bring their conscious, or rather they would be conscious enough to address this.
I'll be surprised if a startup CEO thinks about it, period. A startup CEO is thinking about capital. If he's strapped for funds, the kind of people he'll bring about are not the best of people. It will be mediocre, because he can't afford to pay that kind of salary.
Correct.
Whether he holds them on, whether they stay with him. I think it's important to hire people for a startup person if he's strapped for funds or otherwise, who believe in your dream of what you're trying to create, and somebody who likes you and you like them. That's the first thing for a great productivity, because you are not going to be able to make or break even in the first 5 to 7 years. So that time when you are raising funds, bringing, you know, investments and stuff like that, you need a bunch of people who believe in it, that we can create. I've been on boards of some of the startups, and it is wonderful to see that you don't have to have Ivy League people or grade B school people. They come, they are graduates, but they're stuck with their CEOs, and you know, they made the company happen. And today, okay, some of those companies became unicorns, and you know, they made their money as well as they worked in that. There are other companies which have a lot of funds, so they bring in a few people who are known, and they'll say, you know, I hired these guys from the best B schools and IITs and IIMs and everything else. But then they do a disservice of not utilizing their skills properly, because usually a guy who's a promoter or an investor, he wants to hold on to the decision making himself, and so he ends up giving them some power, that you know, you can write this algorithm for me, you can do this technology for me, you can be part of, I mean, branding and people really is not on their mind. They are just thinking about the money that they're making in the beginning to break even, get the product out there. So for them, they end up hiring a few people, but they're not utilizing them. In fact, the more youngsters that I speak to around the globe who come from the best schools and universities and B schools, they always are frustrated in the first top to 2 to 3 years, because they say that, you know, and this was the thing even when I was younger, that people would say, you know, usually the guys from the IIMs used to always tell me in the Big Four consulting that, you know, ma'am, they're making us do PowerPoint presentations. The version that overseas people would say, they'd ask me to bring coffee. Okay, in India, we still have peons to bring coffee, but that bit of it. So none of them are utilized for their skills. They're brilliant kids. So, and then they get demotivated that, you know, my skills are not getting utilized. So that is why a lot of them start their own things these days, and which is great. But it has its own level of frustration, and sometimes when the markets are not doing good, it's a long winter for getting investments, and that can be, they are lucky if they get investments, but if they don't, it can be very frustrating. So I think it's great if people who are starting up, they have great mentors, and these days there are organizations and other things, they know who to ask, who should, not just about the funds, but about managing people or other things, and to get started. So my answer to them is that, you know, to get the right people who believe in their dream and who they like and who they like to work with, that's important. But if you just go and get people from the market, they're just going to see ki salary mil raha hai ki nahi, because I know startups which have not paid their people for months, but they believe in the guy who started the fund, the company.
I think building culture is important, right? So a early stage entrepreneur also, I understand your point where you're coming from, that these guys are running behind something that is priority for them, while there is longevity that is expected from the team, right? So if someone is aware or is conscious about this need, how do that person ensure that he is being trained as well, his team is trained? Because I have not seen a lot of startups having L&D, learning and development, as a department itself, right? They are just hiring people and maybe even giving them some carrot with perks and retaining those guys. Or even these days ESOPs have come in. How do you ensure that these startups, have you been associated with incubators who are helping these startups develop that culture?
Okay, you know, culture is a thing really way ahead. When you do a startup, the person says that these are the 4 people, this is the product kind of a thing or a service I have in mind, and I'm going to start something. Most of the things that you see, Blinkit today, a Zomato today, a Swiggy, or whatever you look at it, or even if you look at some of the IT products, when you see it in the beginning, there is one guy who's doing your admin, your finance, your payroll. You don't have HR and L&D. Those are things, I mean, really, even in big organization, learning and development is a luxury to have. There is one guy who's ensuring that payroll is there, who's paying the vendor and doing everything else. So let's be very real that startups don't have that luxury. They do not have the money to do that thing, and if they have the money, L&D is not a thing they are going to ever have. It's learning on the job. So a culture, to define it basically, is the guy, how is he running the organization? It is, this is the way we do things around here, is a culture.
Correct.
That's how we look at a community. This is how a bunch of people behave when they pray, when they do things, etc. That's how cultures are created.
Correct.
So this bunch of people will totally shadow a leader who has set it up. How does he communicate? What is his vision? What does he intend to do? That becomes the thing. And if he is a guy who is transparent, communicates effectively, doesn't hold information, believes in being very direct and straightforward. Smaller teams, when you start with 5, 10, 15 people, people are part of it. Every day there is an excitement, there is a dip, getting money, getting things, going and making pitches to people, seeing what response you're going to have. That is a startup philosophy. If you're brilliant, even then, you want to make sure that you are doing your testing at a beta level, on the beginning level, and you're going to people and saying, listen, I know a lot of HR tech companies who come and saying, hey ma'am, can we I just came from Bangalore, and in an evening I met a lot of people who were ex-bankers, but now they are part of some AI startup and all that. So they're saying, ma'am, can I present it to you? So I, around 12 years back, I was bunch of few people, we put some money in HR techs, and we chose about 5 odd such companies, and we said that, you know, we are HR professionals, we should encourage people who are doing something in that field. And I'm very happy to say that each of those companies is, few of them became really good unicorns, and they did very well. But it took 8-10 years for each one of them to do that. We have a couple of them more remaining, others got picked up and sold off, which was very nice. So I think if you can contribute in some way to either the fraternity you belong or the domain that you have, you can help people in that area come up. So I think it's amazing, and these days so much is happening in India. It is the place to be in for startups. Yes.
Interesting. So I was just reading a survey, basically it's called the labor survey, right? And April 2025 they mentioned that youth unemployment is around 13.5%, which comes to around 5 crore of young people being unemployed. Whereas there is another survey which says that 60% of corporate vacancies are majorly because of lack of
not
talent.
Finding good people. Yes.
So from a professional perspective, from an unemployed person, right, what is he not doing correct? Is it about the skills, or is it about approaching this companies not correctly? Like, based on your experience, you have
both.
Yeah,
both. I'll tell you what, with Linda, Dr. Linda Grayton, when we worked for 10 years, we studied, and it's going on even now. It's the longest study on the future of work. One of the greatest things I found was that the HR heads in UK there were constantly sitting with what in India we would call the employment exchanges, and tell them what kind of vacancies industry has. And they would feed that back to universities to say that we are looking for more engineers, more software people, more health care workers, etc., etc. That is important, because then the university encourages students to take up that thing. If you have studied in India, how do people pick up their area of specialization unless they have parents who are very educated? Ma'am, I got good marks in maths, so I did this. I mean, commerce, I've taken up commerce. People were taking up geography, history, anything. We never asked them, what do you intend to do, or whether those skills will be employable later. They just did it because it was easy to do, or the marks were there, or things like that. There's more awareness now, but 20 years back it wasn't there. So 2-3 things here happening is that really the smaller towns in India and the otherwise, even BC category towns, what ends up happening is that today the Prime Minister's schemes that you have, 800 million people, 80 crore people actually get free ration. most of the people in smaller towns have a free dwelling. They stay with their parents. What kind of house? Let's not talk about it. It's big, small, but they have a roof on their head. Okay, so they still till their age 23, 24 are trying from various exams on the government thing that I want a government job. They can't sack me. मुझे private sector में नहीं काम करना है. I have been involved ever since I came back to India in one such edtech, where we said we'll go to the heartland of the country and we will give employable skills to those people so that they can join good institution, write them to write a resume, give them digital literacy, also give them language skills so that maybe they don't speak good English, so they don't get jobs, everything else. But those people do not want. In the last 5 years, despite COVID, we have impacted 30,000 people, which is a big deal.
Yes.
In Madhya Pradesh.
Yeah, amazing.
But the fact is that they don't want to. They just don't want to work. They'll tell you very nicely that, I'll get a job. So what is happening, which is interesting, is that the people in B category towns, if you spoke to somebody, say in Indore, he will tell you, ma'am, I want to work in Gurgaon. I want to work in Bangalore. I want to go to Noida. And if you want to speak to smaller towns in MP, I once went to a women's hostel in a place called Sagar, where 900 girls were there. They said that initially it was dinner time, an hour before dinner, so they said we don't want to turn up, I don't know who's come. And then when I started saying they won't let go of me for a couple of hours, because they said, can you change the society for us? Can you tell our parents that we want to work and not get married?
Yeah.
So actually, I am very enthused with the fact that there is so much awareness getting created that there is more to life than get married, but parents haven't changed. Parents still feel settling down is, getting married, having a kid, but at least people with education are having. So these people want to come to an Indore because they are from smaller towns. Then they come to a BC category town where there's a university, and those kids want to go to other bigger towns. That's why migration of workers happens. That's why when COVID happened, we saw how many people were in Mumbai who were going back to their in UP, Bihar, wherever they came from, or rest of Maharashtra, or wherever they were coming from. That is what ends up happening. So we do have a lot of people. What kind of jobs they match? Do we match their expectations? Because if they're getting a free boarding or free something, and you'll be surprised, the kind of jobs they want is a Swiggy. So there's a gig workers.
Correct.
What do they want to do is, one of the guys says that, if I need a job, I can pick up anything, including the fact that I can go and dance in a barat and I'll get paid $250 or I can be a waiter for something else. This is a different kind of a gig. Don't talk about knowledge workers. I'm talking about how BCD category towns. So they make the money for a month or two, then they have that enough money, they'll spill it off for 2-3 months. When they don't have money, they go back into some job. So do they really want that? And there are times that I have addressed some of these people in some of their B schools, not the really different kind of B schools, and ask them questions and saying, how could you have done an MBA when you can't even know a basic thing?
Correct.
But we are churning out business school MBAs of different things, so the standard of education is different. You have great schools in India who are teaching a breadth of subjects, but they're not going into the depth of those subjects. If you have seen schools overseas, the expat kids who go to Asian countries, Middle East, overseas, one of the things they'll tell you is that we can't compete with Indian kids. Why? Because in India, from the time that you are born, you are used to competing. There are few good schools and everybody wants their kids to go them. So the stress and the pressure starts very early in life, and those kids are getting trained by their parents or their preparatory schools for a kindergarten as well, and kids are put into those schools. That pressure haunts you because you want them to go to good universities finally, and the number of people, hundreds and thousands, who write the exams for GE to get into IIT or CAT and things like that, NEET for medical and other things. So when kids make through that, we need to be very happy for those kids because they're coming in. But where it is sometimes gets lacking, which is not just here but globally as well, is the depth of knowledge. I'll give you an example. I found with my daughter that she was small, 11, 12 when we left India. Geography. What are the capitals of all the states, of all the countries, which are the physical crops, which are the physical features, what are the crops that are imported, exported from every state, country, you remember that. Then she goes to Singapore to study, and you are expected to understand if you have China's one-child policy, what implications does it have? If a certain country, I mean, the questions were that why didn't India start making wheat or road? Is it connected to the colonial history? Why was this country not allowed to do that? Where were they? Which was the Silk Route? What was happening? So everything is connected to the knowledge, and you actually are encouraging kids to critically engage with the knowledge and ask questions and explore. So I think when she came home and saying, Mom, what do you know about the one-child policy? And I was like, all right, we were talking about, but the good part was one day the quiz on capitals happened and she won hands down. And she came and said, now that Indian knowledge is coming handy. So there is a lot that we do. And when you have to cover so much of breadth of information, kids depend on rote. So that's why people overseas laugh about it, that Indian kids are great in rote learning. But no, it's not that India doesn't produce the best minds who also know the depth, and not many people can compete with it. Things which we cannot compete in the global rankings are to do with infrastructure of some of our best educational schools, or the number of papers published by the professors. That's where we sometimes end up lacking. But otherwise, I think we do have very good schools as well who produce the world's best leaders. So I think having seen that, I'm sorry if this is a long drawn answer.
No. But what was your experience with recruitment? Were you involved anytime directly in recruitment? So what did you see? Did you see that a lot of applicants just randomly applied rather than focusing? Because I see that not happening globally, right? Where they have students have analyzed that we want to go in these 100 corporates, right? Let's try for 10 first. Why this? Versus here, when you pick up a call, they don't even know which company. I've applied many. This is the answer, right? Generally, you get. So you see that there is some change required at that end as well. Do you think that?
Okay. Again, it depends on the which kind of schools have you gone to? Which kind of universities have you gone to? There are universities which prepare you, they get employers to come and address the students, and they do all that. The good part is that you are not only training them on technical thing, whatever they're specializing in, finance, marketing or something, or if the area of the subjects they're doing, also what to expect when you join a corporate. Now there are countries which believe, and in India also we have a strong apprenticeship program.
Agreed.
If these people went and shadowed some of the business people, they would understand what to expect in a corporate. The majority of the Indian heartland, the hinterland of the country, the Bharat which we seems to have not talk about sometime, they don't know what a corporate is talking about. They won't know what is a Nestle or a Unilever or a Goldman Sachs or things like that. But the great fun is, I remember as a youngster enjoying and interviewing some day -2 or -1 for some of the Ahmedabad or some kid. Not only he knows that he wants to do in banking, he knows which bank, what department and what desk he would want. He would tell you that I have written a paper on derivatives and this is what it was about. And you said, oh my God, that is really amazing. So there are both ends of the spectrum. Then there are kids who write and saying, Madam, till I know somebody, I will not get a job. And that myth is that, there was a time, perhaps there was a thing. Now think about it, if the organization does have an AI tool, it will first of all eliminate people on the basis of that they are not qualified because of A, B, C. Then the bunch of people which will be sent. Most of the time the youngsters today are frustrated with the fact that I seem to have good things on paper, I'm a graduate at a good percentage, etc., because those things matter. A lot of selection criteria for good organizations are based on things like that. I find that they get ghosted by companies because the HR has not got back to them, or maybe only the select few who made it went there. So there are things like that. So overseas specifically, when Indian students go, they'll tell you that we don't even get a call. I remember a friend of mine whose daughter had 4.0 GPA in US and was from Wharton. And she said, she's auntie, I had 70 disappointments. I applied to all organizations, but they didn't have a seat for me. Finally, she got it. She got it she wanted New York. She got it the second time round. But the first time round, that company was ready to take her in some American town in the Midwest. So I think it totally depends on what you're expecting.
Correct.
And what comes out of it. Good students happen to know the industry sector they want to go to, they know what they want. Other kids, so there are career counselors these days who help you. Kids should know who to ask. Most kids just ask friends and saying, where should I go? If you're going there, can I also go there? But I think today there are a lot of people, there are professors who are good mentors, teachers who try to keep themselves up to date. It totally depends on what kind of a place you're going or approaching someone who knows little bit. When you help such students, it's very fulfilling actually, because you realize a lot of people didn't have. And when we came back and we started working in MP, I remember meeting these people and saying, I'm so thankful that I had good education and great grades and good breaks in life. And for me, very early in my life, I had very many accolades and I rose very fast. So I sometimes look back now and I think that I really have my parents to thank. I have a lot of people in my life to thank for having reached wherever. But it seemed like there was a country we had left behind. There were a lot of people who didn't know the basics. It is very difficult to work there. It makes you very sad, but they are getting paid. The government is taking care of education for girl child in MP for last many years. So girls are more educated. They are very confident these days. They want, in fact, a lot of girls do e-commerce from home, things like that. So I feel that you need to take a call and say, every time that a question comes, I ask, which sector are we talking about? Are you talking about people in metros? Are you talking about BCD category towns? Or what kind of a thing you're saying about? Because India is huge. And the kind of people we are talking about, if there's people within our community here where we live, it's very different. Everybody is so smart. They come from good education and this thing. And some of them that you interview, they will find out that they have had the challenges, but they've come out of it and are doing very well. So
that is true. Let's now come to the professionals, right? We've spoken about young professionals as well as early stage entrepreneurs. Let's come to professionals who are now in their either CXO levels or just a level below them, and now have been, because mostly what I hear from them is, since the whole pyramid structure where the vacancies at the top is very less, right? They find it difficult to find another job and they're stuck in that job. So what is your advice for those guys, right? What should they do differently which will help them either to get out of that organization or at least scale up in that organization?
Actually, from the beginning, you need to have a learning attitude which says that I'm going to keep investing in myself.
Correct.
That is something that I have done all my life and I continue to do. Is that you need to keep investing in your skills, upgrading them, because things are changing in the environment very fast. Careers are not linear anymore.
Correct.
There are two sets of people. For them, I joined as an assistant manager, then was a senior manager, AVP, VP, EVP, president, etc., etc. Believe me, considering that I have coached for so many years, most people titles have changed, but their own growth hasn't happened the way it should be. Yes, they were looking at a team, now they're looking at a territory, they're looking at a zone, etc., etc. Some of them meanwhile have moved to a product role, they come back, the geographies have changed, etc. But how much of the skills change? In a banking, for example, because I spent many years in that industry, I can tell you, they will tell you that, listen, I was managing liabilities side, today I'm managing assets. Similarly, a lot of them in a manufacturing, if they're from an auto sector, ancillary sectors, or a IT, this thing. So if you speak to people which within the same teams they've done, Now, a lot of people, they feel that when your growth is linear, one, your titles have to change and your salaries have to change. There are very few people who will say that, listen, because I'm going to learn, I don't mind taking up this job even if it means a little dip in my salary.
Correct.
It does. When I moved from Anderson, which Arthur Anderson got because of Enron didn't exist, but Anderson Consulting became Accenture. So I'm of that era of people. Now that, when you moved out back to banking, they were paying much more. I had been in a bank and then I had moved into consulting, so it was a much greater salary. But when you came back to a bank, I was coming to an Indian private sector bank, there was a dip in the salary. But as a result, because of the knowledge and the whole thing, the exposure that I had, I was a HR head at 33 and a country head even before I hit 40. So what ends up happening is you need to understand that how are you taking it. So instead of a career which is linear, you have to increasingly tell people that it is like a lattice. People move across, then keep going up, and it's like a squiggly career. You take time off. These days women take it for kids or caregiving, etc. Men also do it for sometimes for caregiving, but they might take a sabbatical to study more, and people come back. And today industry is tolerant of that.
Correct.
There was a time when they were not, when you're taking breaks, but today industry says, you know what, he's invested in his career, and that is all right. When you keep doing that, it is very nice. And there are some courses you pay for, and there are a lot of courses online which people don't have to pay for from the best of universities. But the idea is I'm upgrading their skills. You also need to network with those kind of people who understand things. And this is something that women, because most of the guys, I remember, I call them the boys clubs, the old boys club. They'll hang on a Friday evening over whatever drink that they're having and talk about what's happening, the politics, which industry, who's going. That's the time one was rushing to the baby at home, right? And one didn't have time for that. I would sometimes ask them that why can't you have these at 4 or 5 o'clock on one of the weekdays. It didn't, and even if it did happen and you turned up for one such thing, usually because there were fewer women in those days, they would say, oh, you bring so much color to the team. And you said, didn't I bring intellect? Did you have to say what color? So there were different things. But having told you, the youngsters, there was a time that the best high performers, the companies invested in them. I remember a time when you know, the multinational banks definitely sent somebody to you know, they went to school in say INSEAD Paris or Australian schools or somewhere else. You know, there were big universities like Unilever's had in UK. They were sent to some of the places to really get additional thing. Today, because of the cost issues and things like that, companies don't send you. So as a result, either you invest in yourself or you need to find a way to upgrade that your bosses see that. Having great mentors. Now organizations have mentoring scheme in which they say that, you know, this guy can be your mentor. But what do you do for that? Do you find somebody who you say, I would like to be like you, and I'm going to ask those people and saying, would you be my mentor? The other guy has to also agree. We say it very, I've seen a lot of people say that Mandeep has been my mentor. And I feel like there were 80,000 people in HDFC Bank. I'm very glad that they say that. But there are a few I remember mentoring, right? So you need to use that as that I meet you from time to time. I update you on what I am doing. And I seek your advice into how should I navigate my career. That is a true mentor. And for women, I definitely see not to just have women mentors, but also have male mentors. Because sometimes you need an organization sponsors who can tell you that how should you navigate some of the difficult things. Sometimes in organization things become political, and a lot of women say, you know, I don't know politics. I understand, but you at least need to know how to defend yourself.
Correct.
Right? When somebody is attacking you, that is something that you need to know how to take care of. So I feel a lot of youngsters, it's not just about women's issues, because I do a lot of work on that area. I feel most men get misguided, and for years and years, for decades, you're sitting in rooms where people's growth opportunities and promotions are getting decided and the guy is not there, and he thinks that my rating is good and I'll get taken care of, you know, unless he has a godfather or somebody who's taking care of him. Usually It's like, we are tossing a coin and somebody is getting decided. Unless you have somebody who's sitting there and questioning and saying, but why him? And why not this guy?
Correct.
So those kind of things, and then people get frustrated and saying, I'm not going anywhere, I will not make it. Who are they asking for help? Today there are coaches, today there are other people. But it takes strength to walk up to somebody and saying, I need somebody to give me advice. And there are a lot of people who are doing that. When COVID happened, everybody was going for coaches, life coaches who were teaching, or yoga coaches, health and well-being, mental health coaches. Why aren't they going for their own career, and how serious are they? I used to think, because I have always done a C-suite level coaching. When I came back to India, a couple of young men came to me and saying, but why not us? We need it. One, in India, the very senior people say, I know it all. It's I, me, myself. So you don't have to give it to me. So the women leaders were at least more humble and say, listen, I could do with a little bit more. So the self-awareness totally could be lacking. But these younger people, they want to know what are they doing right, what are they doing wrong. And I've enjoyed some of them. I really don't take too young people. But I think it is good fun to be able to learn with them and talk to them. So I think invest in yourself, be very clear, go and look out for mentors, talk to them. Do talk to people in the industry who are in your area of thing to know what is happening in the industry. Are you missing it on something? If you suddenly one day decide, because you didn't make a promotion and I'm looking for a job, you will not just suddenly get it. And there are always jobs. You do not go because you are comfortable in that organization and you say, I'm getting this much salary which I may not get anywhere else. The choices are always yours. You can say that, listen, they are giving me more responsibility. Maybe I need to go there. I always tell people say that I work, 25 years in HDFC Bank, and I said, well, good for you. It was my third organization. The fact is that if I hadn't changed, I wouldn't have reached so early there. And with the right, they had 3-4 HR heads in 4-5 years that they had opened. Nobody would stick with them. I stuck on. So the thing is that sometimes you need to take on challenges and know that. So I think just ask yourself, what do you need? What are you looking for? Are you clear about it? And I think somebody will ask you the right questions, and then you will get frustrated. You should know what you want.
It makes sense, right? Today, having LinkedIn as a platform available where you can, as students also, right, they can come and ask for mentorship. A lot of professionals are helping. If I have an interest in banking, I find out what career opportunities are available, who's working where, and they ask for mentorship. Similarly, if somebody who is young and looking for mentorship in their career and maybe do not have direct access to X or Y person, they can obviously go and network, and people are very helpful, right? And I've personally experienced that through LinkedIn. So
that may be in the Middle East.
No, even in India, I've spoken to people there and they've responded, right? And you can take things forward from there. So amazing. One other point I wanted to discuss is about power dressing. Right, I have had a lot of executive programs which talks about how is power dressing, what is the perspective that it leaves on you. But there are very few organizations or these schools that tell you that what all is required, right, from a male's perspective and a woman's perspective. Why is that needed? It is not for you to just look pretty, but what does it bring on you?
Again, depends on what kind of organizations you work in. Organizations that I have worked for, organizations whose blueprint I have created. I think that's a joke between all the wives that if Mandeep is turning up, everybody would wear a better tie and things like that. And I found it that if I wanted everybody to be brighter, I would, even as a woman, be able to say the nice tie. Because you're the only woman in the team and you wanted everybody to shape up. You're in a service industry. 55% of contribution to GDP in India is through service industry. You would want people to turn up well, whatever. If they're in a back end, that's a different thing. But if you are with a customer, specifically in financial services, consulting, I worked with some of the guys, my God, you could see from their shoes till the thing, they were amazing. And the big four specifically. Indian banking were not there, and I had trained in multinational where it was important. I think I won't call it power dressing. I think I feel it's a corporate attire. And it goes for me from the way you dress to the way what attitude you wear. I consider this as corporate attire. There is mannerism in that, there are corporate etiquettes in that, and there is the way you turn up. And that has to be, I hate to say this in the Gen Z and millennial, a lot of them don't like to shave. They feel that everybody can carry that Ranbir Kapoor or Karthik Aryan look. No, you can't. They look terrible. Nobody shaves anymore. Not everybody carries that beard, half done thing very well. That is the norm thing. The way they wear their hair, etc., etc. Yes, once in a while you do meet people who have longer hair and they carry it very well. But carrying it is what is important. I think girls exactly know what they're wearing, and I think wherever I have been, I say that, including the fact that you correct people if they don't know what is there. And what are the corporate colors that are expected in organizations? I think some organizations put it in their handbook to say that this is what is expected. The problem is that there are a lot of organizations who don't have such basics defined. So anybody will turn up. For example, if you're down south and I'm on a lot of boards, people can wear flowers in their hair or anklets, and you'll be sitting in a meeting and they'll be going chum, 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 and I'm like looking and saying, remember, you're an independent director, you're no longer in HR, you're no longer in things. So, but when I have conferences, I sometimes tell people that you need to decide what's alright for you. Which could be a good worker, and whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And culturally, it's important for them. But you're in a place of work, what is acceptable? It's like in France, you cannot wear anything which defines which part of the world you come from. You can't wear turbans, you can't wear hijab at work in France. But if you're working in a cell phone thing, they won't tell you anything, right? So I think there are rules which countries have, the rules which organizations have. You need to follow them that way. A well turned out person gives a certain kind of, exhibits a certain confidence. Even if you wear something nice, it makes you feel good. I have always endorsed that. Anyone you know in the corporate world, in banking, who knows me will tell you that. That is something that I've endorsed. There are people, and forget women, men will meet you and say, I remember when you interviewed me, you were wearing a blue sari. And you say, seriously? So that's a distinct thing. I think you do that, and a lot of people, I think, at work. But increasingly, there's a culture of being, very easy with whatever you wear, because people work in startups and it doesn't matter. And I think it has to go with the weather you have. Singapore is very casual in dressing up, not just at work, but otherwise. People wear flip-flops and shorts and things because it's warm, things like that. So it depends on which country you are there and what kind of rules you have. But they will wear whites and beige and blues. They find Indians wear very bright colors, or is one of my friends said, very peacock colors. So you have to be careful which part of the world you are there and what people think. But there is something called dressing well. Yes.
Yeah, because I think it does impact, though you're not facing the client as well. It gives you a certain visibility, right? It does help you. Dressing is the first thing. Visibility is the first thing that you get once you dress well, right? Then is your communication and your gravitas about the topic. So it is important for even somebody who is internally dealing with their back office. My last question, I'm conscious about the time now, is what if you were 28 today and in 2025, in 2025 India, would you join corporate or would you choose startup or would you be doing something of your own?
I think I'd love to go the way my career went. But the only thing which will be today, which I'll be very excited about, is technology and AI. I was a very numbers-driven person, which CEOs loved. I have run retail as well for some time. So when you have done businesses and you understand numbers orientation, it goes very well with everything. I think I would have really loved that. The things we worked so hard in Excel. During my time, Oracle came and a lot of online things when Monster came, LinkedIn came and things like that. But I have worked when we used to have put advertisements and data's coming, and you're having sacks of them and finding outsourced people to actually see through them and go through that. So there was a different era, and that's a different era. So I think I love the conveniences of today. I do find it being very competitive, and sometimes wondering that, how would you, because the distractions are many, which weren't so many in our time. Actually, I am one of those leaders who got into social media only when I left the India corporate life. So I got into Facebook and LinkedIn in 2010. As late as that. So because you just didn't. I mean, if you were somebody who people were expected to know you, you didn't have to know it through LinkedIn. It still goes for a lot of people. So I think, and I have still not joined Twitter and an X till now. So it depends on it. Instagram, I'm pretty new, and it's doing well because I've started putting something else. It's a lot of effort, I can realize, and I think you need to take out the time for that. But I would have loved it. I think I had a early start and a growth trajectory which went with a lot of accolades, and I'll be very honest, by 45 I was ready to hang my boots. At 45, 46, because I had built a security for myself. Then I decided to get into consulting, my work and other things. Some corporate, some the same. I started working hybrid, which came very handy with bringing up a daughter who was a teenager in a different country. Traveling to different countries and doing work, sometimes having a lot of work, sometimes not having to great work. That was a different thing. And I think that was a good part. So when I look at it, I would not change that anyway, because I think that having a head start about work and the capacity to work really hard, odd hours, and round the clock, late hours, I'm a total bird, I can still work very late. I would do it all over again. So that energy is something which defines a leader. I think your energy rubs off on, it's contagious. Success is contagious, it rubs off on the rest of the people. So, and I always feel for everything else, I love to say that elegance is like a beauty which never fades away. So I always feel that that is something which defines you. I feel that as a woman or leader, I have always remembered that. Which is not just the way you look, but the way you speak and the way you treat other people. So that is something I think it may be a quote by Maya Angelou, but it is something which my mother taught me when I was young, that it doesn't matter what you say and what you do, it matters how you treat people. So I have totally gone by that ideal all my life. Being an HR person, it also helped. I think that's me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mandeep. It was such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.